Good morning, listeners and viewers. We welcome you to Conversation for today. We do apologize for the late start, but we hope that we have not lost you. So please call your friends, let them know we're on. It's Conversation with our Bishop for today, the 27th, and I'm sure you're looking forward to what he has to say in this program. Particularly, there are issues that he would like to address, and certainly we look forward. I'm not going to let it out, I would let it unfold. So we greet all of you and hope your day is going fine, and however it's going, that you are hopeful, that you're not losing hope, that God is with you. So welcome, and welcome to you, Bishop, after a very challenging week. But we bless God that you are here, and the song that you introduced the program with, Brother, Sister, Let Me Be Your Servant.
Yes, those of you who have followed me through the years will know that's one of the most challenging songs sung at the ordination when I was washing feet. And I still treasure it in my heart. Let me be as Christ for you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. And as I sit here with Rutina knows that is a challenge sometimes when she wants to do things for the bishop. And I know some of you are that way as well. And the bishop seems to be keeping his distance. Sometimes you are, a bit tentative about receiving the service of others. But the lesson of that is important. We are not only called to love, we are called to let ourselves be loved. And we pray that all of that may be done in the spirit of Jesus Christ. So that song reminds us that we're moving towards the 29th of July, which is the 6th anniversary of my ordination as bishop here. We'll pick that up later on. But we want to get to what we missed, and that is we missed the celebration of grandparents and the elderly day, which was proclaimed by Pope Francis 3 years ago. And it didn't get the publicity that it should have gotten in this diocese. That's one thing we have to try and correct, because the central communications is still not where we would like it to be. Yesterday as well was the memorial of Saints Joachim and Anne. In some parishes there was the renewal of marriage vows, although a lot of people are now looking to renew those vows. A lot of parishes renew the vows on the Sunday before or after. That's okay, but to invite couples to come together on the weekday and then to stay for an agape. On the Sunday, you can't have an agape just for the couples who come. But if you do it on a weekday, you can have the agape for the couples who come, and you could have a very interesting discussion. I had a very, very inspiring discussion last week with a man who is the leader of Engaged Encounter in the Caribbean. He was to come with his wife to see me, but his wife fell ill. But it was really enriching for me to listen to a man talk about how he treasures his own marriage. That's something that the next time he comes, I was telling him, he would need to be present to the men of Grenada and engage them in some conversation about that. So those were missed, but to all the grandparents and the elderly, we offer our prayerful regards. Continue to make your own journey, knowing that God is with you, but also continue to pray for the church here, for your grandchildren, and for all those who care for the elderly. Very, very important ministry. For all of you who are married, living the married life, as we know in Grenada, that is not something that is common. There are a lot of people who are not hearing the vocation of matrimony, and more so the culture itself seems to be saying, well, you don't have to get married. That has consequences for the society unless the society itself builds in ways of obligation, because marriage becomes an obligation. It becomes a way of accountability that you are responsible for. If you're not responsible for anything, if you're not accountable to anyone, your life is all the poorer for it, because you do whatever you want, and you never really take up the challenge. So to all of you who have taken up that challenge, know that you have my admiration and respect, but also I wish that you could be more engaged with others in helping the young people to see that. And we have to call on those who are in various groups like Couples for Christ, Marriage Encounter, and so on, to be more active in their witness in the diocese. That is our prayer. So Joachim and Anne, pray for us and for all those who are seeking to live the marriage sacrament.
Thank you, Bishop. So, listeners and viewers, in case you've just joined us, we're on to conversation with our bishop, and as he spoke, the word service just loomed, came out from all that you are saying in the sense of how we live our lives, our Christian life, our vocation. So, we know there has been a big challenge in terms of the pilgrimage. I remember speaking last week when you asked me to say something, and I used the word precariousness. I used the word surprise. And I wasn't even thinking, say, well, you know, kind of have in your own mind, kind of surprises from the previous experiences, but that one was like, oh, that is what you call precariousness. And please, because our listeners and viewers would like to hear what is friends, the situation on this matter.
Let me say in advance, I can't tell the story. You know, I think really that what GNCC is going to have to do is to develop a program, I don't mind being part of it, in which these young people tell their story. I don't know what else awaits them in Portugal. I'm trying to open up 1 or 2 doors, but whatever happens in Portugal, they're due to arrive in Portugal today. Whatever happens, what they've been through before now, up to now, is really a story, a message, a powerful grace in itself. The facts are that they left here on Saturday morning last, and they headed to Trinidad, but when they got to Trinidad, it became clear what we were suspecting a bit, that the leg from Trinidad to Panama was not really confirmed. And what got me more angry, we discovered it wasn't even paid for. At least not by the parents, but by the travel agent, the person who was responsible for seeing about that. I can say categorically that nobody here was at fault, nobody in Grenada. The only fault that we had was that we trusted somebody who was responsible in Jamaica. We're not getting to names at this point. But at that point, nobody knew what was going to happen, and decisions had to be made. And it was coming up to $100,000 plus to get them to Panama so that they could go on. And then, thanks be to God, somebody came to their help, and they were able to arrange a flight directly from Trinidad to Portugal at a cost of over $125,000. Now, how are we going to deal with that come the future? That hasn't yet been decided or worked through. The government of Grenada did help in a significant way, as well as somebody whose name I will not call unless I have their permission. But they were very significant in all of this. But the end point is that they were off yesterday afternoon to Portugal, except for one person who made a mistake, which really, we need to tell our young people these things, and they need to look for these things themselves. If you're traveling, you must make sure that your passport is in order, more than 3 months validity are still on it. You know. If you don't do that, you could get trapped. I mean, I've known one person who, it's true if you're going to the islands, that's not necessary, but you go to Barbados, you get to Barbados, you fall sick, you need to go to the U.S., you don't have a U.S. visa, or your U.S. visa has expired. So, or your passport has expired. So these kinds of things are things that you need to look at. But that's one problem to be dealt with. What happened was they were stranded in Trinidad until it could be arranged for them to leave yesterday. But I am so proud of our young people because I spoke to them on Tuesday evening, all along, as anybody would be, they were distressed, there was tears, and all kinds of things. But when you listen to them tell the story of faith, the story of young people praying as they never prayed before, and very often, when you think of young people praying as they never prayed before, you're thinking of exams, But in a situation where they knew that only God would be able to open a door for them, touch somebody's heart in some way. And they had more faith than I did in terms of the kind of way in which they engaged the Lord in prayer. And it came through, people came through for them. And we in Grenada have to give tremendous gratitude and thanks to their hosts in Trinidad. Their hosts in Trinidad were only supposed to host them for one night. Let them get on the plane to Panama the next night, But they ended up staying 4 or 5 nights, I think it was. And love, affection, people, Sister Maureen, I understand, was part of this in some ways, but people who didn't know these young people, came to their help. And what is even more important, they will tell you that they became closer, they were bonded together by the negative experience that they had. And what I am very grateful to God for is to hear young people saying for themselves that we were suffering, we were angry and all of that, but we could see the hand of God in these negatives. And one lady said to me yesterday, she said, that she was hoping that they would see what was happening, because life is not about straight lines. Life is not about the easy way forward. Life is about those moments when you have to struggle, when you have to fight, when you don't know where you're going and don't know what the next step is going to be. But it is in those moments that you find God. And I am very, very happy for these young people that they've been able to go through that experience. That may be the one thing truly worthwhile in this whole pilgrimage, which will last them through the rest of their lives. I feel very strongly about that, and I thank God for this, even if on Saturday I was really wondering to myself, Lord, what you doing? But even those kinds of expressions, we must not be afraid of looking up and saying to, or bending down and saying to the Lord, Lord, where are you? And sometimes we use more beautiful and colorful language. Nothing wrong with that, because God is not easily insulted. All this business, you can't say that to God. The prayer comes from deep within, and God searches our hearts, right? And he hears the prayers of his servants, of his sons and daughters. So there's a lot to be grateful for. And thanks, as I said, to all those people in Trinidad who came there to help. Thanks to the people in Grenada who supported them along the way by their prayers and so on. Thanks to those who were more than just support, who put their money where their mouth is and who helped to make things possible. We will have to do, and I pledge this publicly, we will have to do a thorough investigation into what has happened. My brother bishops have agreed to this, and we will take it from there to ascertain what has really happened.
Thank you, Bishop. I think many people were looking forward to hearing you, something official on what has happened. But one person said here, but there was a lot of months to prepare. It is not their fault. It is the person who was planning the trip. They had to be advised. So,
all I will say to that is, those of us who are outside of these things, as I have been outside of them very often, we think we know. But as another person said to me, some of us have to be aware, and this is one time when we can learn that lesson, that there are times when you're planning and you're planning and you're planning, but there are some things you cannot plan for, and one thing you can't plan for is the dishonesty of other people, because we're called as Christians to trust. People in a marriage situation, you might say, oh, I know my husband or my wife, and they're this and they're that, they're the other. And then the day comes when you discover something else. Can you say, I had years to prepare for that? No, it's happened. And the key thing here, and this is true of every such situation, what can I learn from this that will not make sure I don't make these mistakes in the past, in the future, but that will make me a stronger person? Yeah. I am totally convinced at this stage of my life that the salvation question is not, are you saved? The salvation question is, who are you becoming in God?
I'd just like to add here from the second letter of Corinthians, chapter 4. It says here, for this reason, we never become discouraged. And it goes on, even though our physical being is gradually decaying, yet our spiritual being is renewed day after day. And this small and temporary trouble we suffer will bring us a tremendous and eternal glory, much greater than the trouble. For we fix our attention not on things that are seen, but on things that are unseen. What can be seen lasts only for a time, but what cannot be seen lasts forever.
Amen.
So
we...
a lot of more questions and answers, but in any case, as I said, we have to be guided because there's so much that can be said or is being said, and it's important when the bishop speaks because it sort of puts a lid on things. So somehow, because we could refer to what you say when we are making reference to the situation. This is what you have said, even if people have their own ideas. So thank you for...
But let me just say, I'm not putting a lid on anything until we investigate the situation and find out exactly what happened.
Yes, I don't mean a lid on things because, of course, we expect an investigation because this is, cannot be accepted. And it's not their fault. So, listeners and viewers, we ask you to continue to pray for the pilgrimage, for our youths, our young people. And as Bishop said, it will be an experience that will journey with them, let me put it that way, throughout their lives and our lives too. Okay? We move on to the next aspect. As you know, on the 29th of July will be the anniversary, the Episcopal ordination of our bishop 6 years ago. I may want to ask you a reflection. No, we wouldn't go too much reflection, but I guess it would be wonderful looking back 6 years, and you said, no more to go. I don't know about what the Lord has in store. Speak to us about your this experience and how you'll be celebrating, because the Mass will be on Saturday.
It's difficult to talk in this because we started late about the experience itself. You can't condense 6 years in this. All I can say is that, every year the grace of God strikes me in particular ways. And this year, celebrating, I always look to the readings of the day to guide me in terms of how I identify things. But this year, this last year has been a year of tremendous challenge, difficulty, especially since January, as things have unfolded. And it has led me to have a deeper awareness that really you are not the one calling the shots or singing the tune. That you really have to, as we say in the song, surrender it all. And you try to do your best. And one of the things that I'm very clear now is that I cannot say to myself or to anybody, I'm retiring just now, so I'll take it easy, I'll slow down the pace. No. I think what the Lord is saying to me very clearly is you're going to the wire. Yes. As a matter of fact, I was thinking the other day and praying about this, that, I know that I won't be leaving office on the 9th of November, unless God takes me before that. But even if I were, that there is a sense in which you realize that you it's not, well, I didn't want to be quoting Tony Panton, but it's in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. It's all God's work. And you see his hand at work, for instance, with these pilgrims. I see his hand at work in some of the things that have happened this year. And you're grateful to God. I'm deeply grateful to God for an awareness of his presence. If I were to claim anything, I have something which I think is weird. To me, sometimes it seems so weird, Lord, you're there, The only thing that matches it sometimes is my awareness that I am my mother's son. Sometimes that's very clear and strong to me, And I think that's because my mother accompanies me in this journey that I'm on. But at the same time, I've grown to love Grenada. I have no question of that in my mind. When people ask me what I'm doing after I retire, I will leave Grenada for a while, because whoever takes over must have the freedom to build his own style. He mustn't be having people hankering after something else. But to come back and hopefully to be a part of something, there are so many things that need to be done. But that will depend on whoever succeeds me, because one of the things you're always clear as a bishop is that when you leave office, you are no longer the bishop. And you have to be obedient to the bishop. For instance, right now I say, me, your unworthy servant. When I'm no longer bishop, I'll have to say, John Thomas, bishop of this diocese, But to condense some of this, I'm deeply grateful to God for the ways in which he has led through thick and thin, through joy and pain and so on. I'm also grateful to God for the people. There are some people in this diocese who have come to mean a lot to me. And I'm grateful to God for them. They have supported. One of the things that has happened in the last months is that there are people who come across as they hate you, this and that and the other. But what God has done in my heart, and I know it's in my heart, I hold no rancor towards anybody who has said anything negative. I hold nothing towards anybody who, some people are telling me, so-and-so who do this and so-and-so who do that. There is absolutely no bitterness about these things. And I thank God for that, because I think there's a grace. When I sit down in my office and I listen to some people and I hear the bitterness that is behind them, I wish I could take the freedom that I feel and put it in their hearts. Because that gift of freedom in the midst of adversity is a gift that I think I have been granted. And I thank God for that, So to all of you, you know yourselves, the people whom you could absolutely depend on, And this might sound strange, but the cook housekeeper at the house, I can depend on her, really depend on her. And I thank God for that. And you know what? She's not a Catholic. And I only discovered that after 4 years. It didn't enter my imagination that the person who would be employed as a housekeeper in the bishop's house would not be a Catholic. But she isn't. But she's a very warm person and a very kind person. And I thank her for that. I could go on and on and on, but I don't think. All that is left is to say that there will be Mass at the Cathedral. I will celebrate Mass at the Cathedral on Saturday at 6 p.m. and Sunday morning at 8 a.m. And it will be those will be the 2 anniversary Masses.
Okay. Thank you, Bishop. And you said a lot to think about. Thank you. And congratulations on your 6th year here in Grenada. And I think there was a preparation, and from what you said, our life takes a journey and takes a course. And sometimes we do not understand why it has taken this course. And as you said, you hold nothing against anyone. Life would have taken you through a course. And has brought you to this day when you can say this, And I think this is the desire of every Christian heart, that regardless, you have your nature, your character, and it's like you're not going to, this is what you do, this is who you are. And this is important for us to hear. I was speaking to a young lady yesterday, and she was saying, I am who I am. I don't have to be somebody else. I don't have to be a model for somebody. And she was confident, not with arrogance, but simply to accept, this is me, you know? And I am loved by God, and I would not use who I am to hurt other people. So I thank you for all that you have shared, and continue to pray for God's blessings upon you as he leads you. Now, I'd just like to refer to some comments here. Vila says, Vilia, dear Bishop Clyde, she says, congratulations to our dear Bishop. Then this other person says, come to Jamaica and spend some time. And then there are two other comments that I think I just wanted to refer to here. Eloise, she said, God has a way to catch our attention. And as young people, we have to learn patience and learn to appreciate the small things. Life is about small things. Life is about struggles. And as parents, as a parent, I want to trust God for whatever he allows in my life. So there are other comments, you know. Thank you, Bishop, for all the effort and the confidence placed in the young people. We have focused on our youths, and out of them we can see great things happening. Thank you for accepting.
Well, I want to ask all of you to pray, because we have some real challenges with youth ministry in the diocese. And I personally am waiting for the Lord to open the door that will lead the way. I mean, I was waiting on the catechetics thing, because I'm really convinced that you don't rush to have a, get somebody. No. God has a way of urging you on. And with catechetics, I'm convinced that the door has been opened. With youth ministry, I'm hoping that the door can be opened very soon as we try to move on.
And finally, this person says here, I guess as you refer to the youth, it is a pity that the Archbishop in Trinidad have to step in when he said no turning back at a morning mass, while as parents we were not hearing anything from our diocese. I guess that somebody was referring to the situation with the pilgrims. So,
well, I mean, you see, the only thing I want to say for that is, one of the things I've learned long before this is, when you're in a crisis situation, don't open your mouth too quick. You're never sure, You're never sure what the whole picture is, right? We didn't open our mouths quickly. If we had, it would have been a different story.
Yes. So thank you, listeners and viewers. This is Conversation with our Bishop. The phone lines are open, 435-0143. But at this point, we'll take a very
No. We're doing,
just before we take the break, we'll just go into another aspect.
Even as we speak here, the funeral of Madonna Harford is taking place at the cathedral. I would have loved to be there, but I felt that I'd been missing one or two sessions of this. I didn't want to miss another one. But Madonna Harford is somebody whose story, I met her once for a conversation, and I was very impressed in the conversation. But her story as a woman, through the changes in Grenada, the revolutionary changes, the public service changes, her story is amazing. Amazing. And I've honored that myself in my own prayer for her. And I pray that God will give us people like her. There are a number of women now in public office who, they know the challenges that they face. The other day when I prayed for public servants, one or two people got vexed. But I have no apologies for that, because people like her need our prayers. They need our support. She was that mix which you rarely see, a trade unionist and somebody who was a permanent secretary. And that's a rare combination. And we thank God for her. We pray for her family in this moment of bereavement. The funeral itself will have its own anguish for them. And we ask God to bless them richly. As we're on this scene of remembering, this morning, I heard of the death of Sinead O'Connor, a singer, rock star, who, and I mention her because she's, go and check her on the internet, you know. She's born in Ireland, grew up Catholic. And what made her to some extent infamous was the day when at a concert, she tore up a picture of Pope John Paul II publicly. 4,000 people protested to the television station when she did it. People called her all kinds of names, condemned her to hell and all that sort of thing. I suspended judgment on that because I understood there must be something here. You know. Later on, it became clear. Although she was born in Ireland, she was put into a reformatory, which used to be one of these Magdalene homes where young women who seemed to be going off track were put. And the story that is now coming out with all the abuse is that most of those young people were abused. And Sinead herself was abused. And she was becoming an advocate for those who have been abused. Pope Francis has made it very clear that we have to be aware of victims. And I gather she had heard that the Vatican at that time was still protecting perpetrators, especially if they were priests and so on. And she expressed her anger. Now she's a hero. But at the time that she did it, she was not. And I think we need to be aware of these things. We need to be able to thank God for people who make those kinds of choices, to really be firm in their convictions. And I invite all of you to pray for people who have been hurt by the church, you know, to the extent that this pilgrimage fiasco hurt people. I hurt some parents, and I understood their pain. I couldn't tell them, don't talk to the bishop like that. I understood their pain. And therefore, we have to try and grapple with that. Sometimes your face have all kind of mud spattered on it, if not sputum. And that's Christian life. That's Christian life. And when I hear people talking about Christian life as if it's only about going to Mass, going to church and everything, it's about these harsh realities which we have to face. And if we as Christians, Pope Francis is calling us to accompany people, and if in every family, every Catholic family in this country, there was at least one person prepared to hear the pain of family members and accompany them when other people didn't care, Grenada would be a better place for that. So I chose to put Sinead on this morning's program, and we're going to listen now to part of her version of a song we know so well, you know. But she was depressed, she was bipolar, you know, she had all kinds of challenges to meet, you know. And in the midst of it all, she echoes a number of her songs have a dirge-like quality about them sometimes. This one that we know well, we can sing it with her. Sooner will be done with the troubles of the world. She died at 56. She's now done with the troubles of the world, but we trust that she's gone home to live with God.
Soon I will be done with the trouble of the world, trouble of the world, trouble of the world. Soon I will be done with the trouble of the world, going home to live with God. No more Soon I will be done with the trouble of the world. Trouble of the world. Trouble of the world. Soon I will be done with the trouble of the world, going home to live with God. I want to see my mother. I want to see my mother. I want to see my mother going home to live with God. Soon I will be done. Oh, trouble of the world. Trouble of the world. Trouble of the world. Soon I will be done with the trouble of the world, going home to live with God.
Sinead,
Well,
Sinead sang that song at a difficult moment. And in the light of events and so on, I'm very conscious of the fact that many people know that depth of pain. But to believe that God is there, God is your home, you find a home in God. And she found a home in God that enabled her to continue to have 2 more children, to live her life with an awareness that her illness, bipolar, didn't have to be the end, the be-all and the end-all. And so I'm dedicating that song to all those who are in the depths, because what we know is that only those who face their depths will truly be healed. Many people who know their own depths even now don't want to admit it. They don't want anybody to tell them that they're sick. And they are the ones who are most in trouble, most inclined to despair. I've been very struck by 1 or 2 of my friends who have spoken to me about the deep hole that they can find themselves in, but who at the same time know that God is their true home. So as we think of the challenges we face in Grenada, may God guide us to trust in the Lord.
amen. So listeners and viewers, we are going to do the gospel for the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And the gospel is from Matthew 13:44 to 52. Jesus said to the crowds, "The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone has found. He hides it again, goes off happy, sells everything he owns, and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he finds one of great value, he goes and sells everything he owns and buys it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet cast into the sea that brings in a haul of all kinds. When it is full, the fishermen haul it ashore. Then sitting down, they collect the good ones in a basket and throw away those that are of no use. This is how it will be at the end of time. The angels will appear and separate the wicked from the just, to throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and grinding of teeth. Have you understood all this? They said yes. And he said to them, well then, every scribe who becomes a disciple of the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who brings out from his storeroom things both new and old. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Those of you who are faithful to your weekend liturgies, I hope would recognize that what we have here is a continuation of last Sunday's Gospel. The kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is like. And therefore, the call to work with it in our minds and our hearts, to understand the metaphors that are being used. And there are three again. There were three last week. There are three again this week. And treasure hidden in a field, which someone has found. They didn't have too many banks and those kinds of things in those days. So when you had a treasure, you hid it. And very often, somebody might only find it later on. We now have a sense of those kinds of things, for instance, happening. People are discovering when they go to the depths of the ocean, ships that were sunk during the wars, and then in fields, things buried. When I was reading this 2 days ago, what struck me was that I understand that in Grenada there is now the question of what happens when you sell your house in a situation where you have been told that you have to sell it or whatever, but then you sell it, but the funeral agency has to come in before it is finally purchased to remove anybody who may have been buried in the yard or where you have family graves. What do you discover then? It really hit me. What do people discover when you dig up the grave of a loved one? So those are real things that happen. And Jesus is taking these realities, and he's drawing messages from them. So you dig up, and the discovery that happens, the unexpected. You may be plowing the land, just plowing it ordinarily, and then the plow makes a sound. That's not a sound of earth, that's a sound of something else. And therefore, the first image here is the image of discovery, of the unexpected. The kingdom of heaven is really unexpected. You come upon the treasure, right? And this surprise of that leads you to go off happy and sell everything in order to possess it. Generosity of heart and mind. Are we really open to make what we discover, in our case as Christians, Jesus and his message, to make that a priority so that we're willing to go? The image that is used in one or two books of recent vintage, that you see the kingdom as costing not less than everything. How many people are willing to say, yes, I will give up everything in order to claim, to possess, and to be able to use this treasure? The other thing that is coming forth from it. The unexpected nature is the first thing. Then in the second image, a merchant looking for fine pearls. There, this guy knows what he's looking for. It's not a surprise. First one is a bit of a surprise. The second one, he knows what he's looking for. And then he finds something of great value. Right? To be able to identify the value. And here I want to put one thing before you all, that I really do not believe that people understand the value of what we have. We don't understand the value of the Christian message. We don't understand that if we really see the freedom that is given to us in God, you know, what this forgiveness that is revealed, this love that is revealed, what it can do for us. Until you meet somebody who is in deep distress because they cannot forgive themselves, you don't know what forgiveness means. Until you've had an experience of being forgiven yourself, you don't know what forgiveness means. And you will always treat Christianity as, go to confession. It's cheap. It's cheap grace. You don't really know the value of it. But Jesus is saying here that what we are offered is something of great value. Great value. And you must be willing to go off and sell everything in order to possess this valuable pearl. The third parable is one that links in with last week's readings because, again, it's probably the more familiar one to fishermen, his inner circle of fishermen, a dragnet. The dragnet which is laid out so that the fish come into it. And when the fish come into it, they can't get back out. And therefore, they're trapped. But the fishermen haul it ashore. And then they collect the good ones in a basket and throw away those that are not of no use. To see that, wheat and weeds, same image. But Pope Francis last week was saying it very clearly. We don't like that image. We don't like that image of the kingdom. We want to think of the kingdom as having all of us holding hands and singing and so on, and everybody good, you know. And it only hit me some time ago, you know, that's partly where we are when we talk about you must be in a state of grace to come to God. I got to be careful about those things. Because God is the one who puts you in a state of grace. So if you come into God, don't say, I can't come to God because I'm not in a state of grace. There's something off key with that. We come to God as we are, state of grace or no state of grace. You know, very often many of us don't know what that means anyway. We come to God as we are. And here there is a warning for those of us who like to judge other people. Oh, he can't be in a state of grace. I saw him in the nightclub last night. Rubbish. You don't know what he was doing in the nightclub. You know, when you see a priest in a nightclub, you immediately presume the priest getting drunk or he gambling. No, I know some people, if they see their neighbor in a nightclub, oh God, look at him, old drunkard. If they see the priest in the nightclub, they say, oh, Father must have gone there to anoint somebody. Give me a break, you know.
Give me a break, Joe.
So it is everybody who is caught up in this net, all kinds of people. And we are told that at the end of it, right, the angels will do the separation. You know, the angels will do the separation. So the ultimate reality is God's. God is the one who has to deal with that, you know, and we leave that in the hands of the Lord. That does not mean that we take God for granted, you know. We can't take God for granted and say, well, boy, I will live as I want. No, because it has eternal consequences. It has eternal consequences. And here we can all say to one another, hey, you're behaving this way, you're doing this, you're thieving there, you know. Hey, okay, we still will love you, we still will be a part of you. But when the time comes to render your soul to God, what will the judgment be? When that day comes, I can't say, Lord, I'm not going to heaven unless he come with me. Can't say that. God makes that judgment. Of course, I'm presuming that I might be going to heaven, you know. But at the same time, I have to be willing to bring people into the light more and more, but never presume that because I seem to be walking in the light, that I am better than they are, or that because I seem to be walking in the light, that I have more right to be in the net or in the basket that has the good fish. You know, these are very important images and texts to pray about because it calls us to a conversion of heart, where we do not judge lest we judge ourselves, where we recognize that we are not the ultimate arbiters. Okay?
I took just a question and you answered it already.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
You're speaking to our heart, conversion of heart. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that depth of reflection, Bishop, on the gospel. Thank you. Okay. The time is running so fast, but we do have a response from the Archbishop of St. Lucia, Archbishop Gabriel Malze. He wrote a response to St. Lucia Carnival. And we are in the season. And also it would have some, what's the word is gone from me?
Some concerns.
Yes, and it will have some influence on us as well. So Bishop would like to refer to this letter, just to some aspects of it that will be very pertinent to us here in Grenada.
I'm hoping that the letter can be read on our diocesan webpage. It's a pity that he didn't read it out in a public way, but I'll ask him about that, yes. And if he does, then we'll see. But he calls it a reflection on Carnival 2023, and immediately, for those of you who follow these things, it means St. Lucia has already experienced Carnival. And from the text, you get a sense that the Archbishop drove along some of the Carnival parade route, and what he saw disturbed him. But he begins in a very positive note when he says it is accepted by many that Carnival and its attendant activities are graced with many positive attributes. The words are beautiful, such as unleashing the creative genius of our Caribbean people, expressed in calypso compositions and their entertaining execution, creative costumes, a viable avenue for collective catharsis, purifying of our emotions and so on. So all of that he sees as positive, but then he warns us, using Paul's letter to the Galatians, brothers, you were called to be free. Do not use your freedom as an opening for self-indulgence. When self-indulgence is at work, the results are obvious: sexual vice, impurity, and sensuality. So he sees the danger that is there, and this is, if going back to the reading, in all of us, in all our hearts, there is that tension, which we are called to live. So then he challenges the people to understand that there is a fundamental unity between body and soul, fundamental unity. And therefore, we may not despise our bodily life. Rather, we are obliged to regard it as good and to hold it in honor, since God has created it and will raise it up on the last day. Our very dignity, therefore, requires that we should glorify God in our body and not allow it to serve the evil inclinations of the heart. And then he quotes Paul in 1 Corinthians, you all know that only too well. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you. Now, so then he goes on to warn us from an objective moral standpoint that whatever is accepted as moral norms or the lack thereof in a generation will spill over to the next generation with its increasing decadence. And we are at a stage where we have to ask ourselves, is the decadence increasing? And then he says, it seems to me that our present less than honorable behavior at Carnival is only a symptom of the bigger reality, the cycle of exploitation of women, which deserves some national discussion. Listen carefully, friends. We must ask ourselves, why is it that the question of nudity applies only to our women. This has been talked about by men a lot. So it's not something that the Archbishop is seeing for himself. But it's amazing, how women seem to take it for granted that their nudity is part of it. But why is it that women become the object, the objectification of our women, and the exploitation? That's the word, because exploitation is always wrong. So those who are carnival designers, costume designers and so on, if you are designing costumes deliberately to exploit women, you're wrong. From a Christian point of view, it's sinful. Then many music artists who are male continue this exploitation by producing lyrics which glorify women shaking their bumper and winding down, encouraging them to embrace the marketing role as whiners. Simply put, but very real. And I would just correct my dear Archbishop in one regard. The musical artists are not only men. Some of the women are also singing songs that invite you to wind down and shake your bumper.
Yeah.
Many women who have been the victim of body shaming because of their physical appearance now use their bam-bam as protest in the public sphere. Now, I smiled to myself and said, how does my Archbishop know about that? You know how he knows about it? He's a Caribbean man. He's a Caribbean man. And that's one thing we need to be aware of. So it's a very interesting point that he's making. That when you look, I became aware of it some years ago, that some women are really getting into a kind of protest. Right? I don't have a Coca-Cola figure, but I will show you what I have. And it's a protest against, but you ask yourself, couldn't we find a more productive, a more healing way of protesting? Because what you're protesting with does not really change the situation. Okay? Now, finally, he's calling for us to have a national discussion. And this is why I'm introducing this here, because I think we also need to have a national discussion. And I'm going to suggest to my brother bishops that we have an OECS discussion, because the OECS states have bundled our carnival more or less around the same time. And we have to ask ourselves, who's calling the shots? We have it at a time when we attract tourists. And I know people who go from one carnival to the other. They take a whole month holidays and they come down to really engage. So I will carry this forward with the Archbishop, and we will have more discussion on this in next week perhaps, or as the carnival itself draws closer. The key words for all of us: women, remember your dignity. Women, remember your dignity. And as I say that, the image that comes to my mind is what used to be in Trinidad Carnival, where women were jumping in such a way that you could not help but smile at the dignified way in which they carried themselves. There can be dignity in it all. And then men respect our women. Men respect our women. A woman is not a thing. Give me the thing. A woman is not a thing. A woman is a human being, a person. And if you, in engaging with a woman, can only engage with one part of her anatomy, you're not engaging with a woman. So watch yourself.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you. Thank you, Archbishop Gabriel Malze, for your deep reflection, which I know would send ripples right through, and it's not finished yet. So we look forward to the consultation, and hope that our people, young, old, everybody would have heard that reflection and Bishop's response to St. Lucia's Carnival, as quoted by Archbishop Gabriel Malze. So we hope something good will happen. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, listeners and viewers, we just have one more point. And Bishop is just going to address, just to remind us of an activity of the Catholic Charismatic Renewal.
I thought you would do that.
Oh,
better.
you thought well, if you allow me, I would.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Yes, it's usually one of the activities of the Catholic Charismatic Renewal called the Jericho March, they used to call it, but now I see a Jericho Walk for Sunday the 30th of July. And I guess the aim of it is to remind us, I guess in the current situations and the events that are taking place, that we are called to pray and to allow the Lord to really rip down strongholds so that people can experience true freedom, and hope. I hope this march really brings hope for our people and to encourage us to come together as one people to pray for the concerns and needs of our family and our nation in particular. So we encourage you to come out on Sunday the 30th, I believe at 3 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock you'll be gathered at the cathedral. Those who cannot walk, but at least to provide some prayer support. And for those who can, you are asked to gather. I'm not quite sure.
It's Melville.
It's at on Melville Street to begin the Jericho March or Jericho Walk for, some people put it, the healing of the nation, and to come as one body to ask God's mercy for all our people.
And I ask you to pray for wisdom for leaders, for all leaders in all spheres, religious, political, social.
Yes.
Because our Caribbean islands need strong and authentic leadership. The last thing we need is leaders who are concerned about themselves and their own success and so on. Thanks be to God, a number of leaders are engaging with people, And I saw a scene at the funeral of Justice Joseph, which really moved me. There was a young man with a basket standing at the door of the cathedral, as the dignitaries were walking out. And Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell stopped and he engaged this young man for a few minutes. I was really very moved by that, because under normal circumstances, people only pay attention to their friend. They see somebody they know. But in this case, the Prime Minister engaged this young man, and that's what we need to have more of. So.
Thank you, Bishop. So listeners and viewers, quite a lot has been said, very deep reflections, and we continue to encourage you to pray for our nation, pray for our people. And Bishop, many people have expressed thanks to you for your service to Grenada, continued service. I hope you receive it. The Lord will reveal to you. Sometimes at the moment it's like, no, it's not about me, but at least people want to express. Okay? And to wish you all the very best as you continue on the journey, discerning what God wishes for you and for your life.
Till death do us part.
Yes. I also need to say that I'll be traveling on Saturday, with the group from the New Catechumenal Way. So please pray for us, and someone else will sit in this chair and to continue the program. Okay?
Safe trip.
So thank you.
The Lord be
very
with
much.
you and bless you always. The Lord be with you, sister. Bless you every way. The Lord be with you and bless you always. The Lord be with you, brothers and sisters. Bless you every way. Have a safe trip with great memories and much grace.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop. And all the very best. We'll remember you too and the concerns of the diocese as we go.
Yes.
And all the very best as you celebrate your 6th year of Episcopal ordination on Saturday. Peace. So we have Mass with Bishop at the top of the hour, so please join us there for celebration of Holy Mass.
I'm surprised you went.
Brother, sister, let me serve you. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be speak the least you